cold-blooded murder of this Kandyan beauty with brains in June of 1971 went down in history as one of the most senseless crimes of the 20th century. This is the case of 28-year-old Somalatha Munasinghe, the very first Peradeniya University graduate from the rural village of Tismada. Her father was the village Vedamahatya. Somalatha broke glass ceilings with her wit and intelligence. She started working in the plantation ministry upon graduation. In 1971, she sat for admission for the Colombo Administrative Service examination. If Somalatha passed this exam, she would be an elite member of the elite administrative service in the country. Sadly, not all residents of the village in Tismada were elated for Somalatha's success. In 1971, most villagers were supporters of the SLFP at the time, whereas Somalatha's father, the Vedamatya, was a leading member and supporter of the UNP, and due to this reason, most of his SLFP relatives cut ties with him. So Somalatha had also applied for a graduate teaching position at the University of Peradeniya's Education Department. It was mandatory when applying for government positions that she would be required to get a letter from the local political leader at the SLFP branch in Tismada. So the president of the SLFP branch in Tismada happened to be Somalatha's cousin, Sub-Postmaster Kulasinghe, who despised Somalatha and her family. Kulasinghe was said to be jealous of her achievements. He would often apply for positions that Somalatha had applied for just to compete with her. So when Somalatha's request for this letter landed on his desk, he refused to consider it. So Somalatha went on and got a letter from the SLFP leader from the village that was next to Tismada. So this also angered Postmaster Kulasinghe, and he voiced to the entire village that he would make sure that she wouldn't get this position. June 25th, 1971. Somalatha left home for work as she usually did. Later that evening at around 4 p.m., Sarat Chandrayapa, a trader at the boutique in Manik Diwala, said he saw the Tismada bus leave the junction. Minutes later, he then spotted Somalatha, who had missed her bus to Tismada. So Sarat asked Somalatha to wait in his boutique until he gets the attention of another bus. But Somalatha smiled and said that she would instead walk to Tismada as she was running late to get home. At around the same time, Somalatha's uncle Alvis Mudalali also spotted her walking from Manikdiwala to Tismada. At 4:20 p.m., an estate labourer spotted Somalatha walking towards the sergeant's well. He was in a vehicle and he asked his vehicle to stop so he could give Somalatha a lift. But his driver complained and refused to stop the vehicle. The next witness was Kirimuthu. Kirimuthu was actually returning from Somalatha's house after delivering laundry to their family. Somalatha, upon meeting Kirimuthu, told her that she had missed her bus and was walking to Tismada. So this would be the last time Somalatha was spotted. The hours passed by, but Somalatha never returned home. Somalatha's family went out looking for her on the evening of 25th of June, but all efforts to trace Somalatha failed until the 27th of June. At around 6:30 p.m. when her father met his cousin Alvis Mudalali, who recalls seeing Somalatha at around 4 p.m. on the Manikdiwala road. Thus began the search party Somalatha in Manikdiwala. At 6:30 a.m. on the morning of 28th June, the body of Somalatha Munasinghe was found. She was only 28 years old. A relative of the Vedamatya, whose name was Senapala, was also present when her body was found. He told the family and police that he had walked by that road the day before on the 27th of June at 5 p.m. yet did not spot the body at the time. The police were said to be starved of clues for several days. The police decided to go undercover for this, under the guise of estate workers, at the village tavern where toddy was being distributed. The police went undercover, mingled with the villagers, and raised the topic to observe how the villagers would react. The police had literally no clue until they met a villager named Premadasa. So Premadasa was also a distant relative of the Vedamatya and Somalatha's family, and after a night out and a lot of toddy, Premadasa was said to claim that he knew who the culprits were and what they did. This revelation got Premadasa arrested immediately and taken to Kandy police station. But when Premadasa was sober, he denied any confession. And he said that he didn't really see the crime, but he rather dreamt of the crime. The police continued to interrogate Premadasa about his dream. This dream led to another arrest, the arrest of Senapala, who claimed to pass the crime scene a day before and not see this body. And when he was interrogated, he confessed to what really happened on the evening of 25th of June. This confession led to the arrest of 3 more suspects. The 3 suspects were Postmaster Munasinghe, W.D. Richard, and T.M. Jayawardena, another relative. So basically there are 2 versions of events that unfolded. One version narrated by Senapala and the other by Jayawardena. Senapala's versions of events were taken into account over Jayawardena's story because of evidence found on both Somalatha and Richard that linked to Senapala's confession. In Jayawardena's version of events, he claimed that around the 10th of June, Richard took him to Postmaster Munasinghe's home, where Munasinghe offered 500 rupees to them for the murder of Somalatha. And on their way back to Jayawardena's house, they ran into Senapala and Premadasa and they told them of their plan. On the 25th of June, Richard's son approached Jayawardena with a message from his father to meet him near the water tank. As Jayawardena reached the water tank, he saw Richard, who seemed intoxicated, swerving from side to side. Jayawardena claimed that he, Premadasa and Senapala followed Richard, but they stopped at the bend of this road. Richard was said to be far ahead of them and was not visible after he had passed the bend. The 3 men suddenly heard the cries of a woman screaming, "Mother, I can't." As the 3 men went towards the direction of the cries, they saw Somalatha being carried by the drunk Richard. Her head was up and her mouth was gagged with the fall of her sari. Somalatha struggled as Richard pinned her to the ground, facing upward. He sat on the lower abdomen of Somalatha and told Premadasa to hold Somalatha's head down. He then asked the other 2 men to hold Somalatha's legs. As they bent down to hold Somalatha, Richard took out a knife used to tap coconuts and slit her windpipe. Premadasa then took off her gold studs and Richard took off her gold necklace. Jayawardena claimed that Richard had threatened all the men into ever mentioning this incident to anyone. In Senapala's version of events, he claimed to not know of any premeditated plans to commit the crime. He claims that after a long day at work at around 3:30 p.m., he departed home with the intention of plucking a jackfruit he had seen at a suburban jungle. He walked into bare land to pluck this jackfruit. He spotted Premadasa and as he approached, he saw Richard sitting on Somalatha, while Jayawardena held down Somalatha's legs. Senapala claims that he tried to run away, but Richard threatened him into staying. Richard asked Senapala to come up to Somalatha. He noticed that Somalatha was being gagged by her sari. He claims that she looked up at him with tears in her eyes. Senapala claims to have yelled at Richard and asked him to stop the crime that he was trying to commit. Richard took out his knife and, as we know, ended Somalatha's life, the same way that Jayawardena described in his previous account. Senapala was then threatened by the 3 men to stay quiet and instructed to lie to Somalatha's family. Since Senapala was the first to confess and the star witness of this case, Senapala got off scot-free. Several abrasions and nail marks were found on the body of the attacker, who was Richard, corroborating Senapala's story as signs of struggle were proven. Due to Senapala's version of events proven to be true, Postmaster Munasinghe got off scot-free, as he was not mentioned in Senapala's version of events and therefore had no other evidence linking him to the crime. Premadasa also got off scot-free during an appeal, as his defense was he did not participate in the murder of Somalatha even though he was present. But W.D. Richard and Jayawardena were both sentenced to death. And as they faced the gallows at Bogambara prison in Kandy, they pled and insisted that they were innocent. They would be the last 2 prison inmates to be executed in the Bogambara prison in Kandy. Have you heard of Somalatha's story before? Is there anything you think I may have missed out? Let me know in the comments.